Boyfriend and I had been together for 6 years, work our day jobs together, and also run a side business together. He's my best friend, and despite managing to get past and through a lot together, he hasn't proposed. His family is starting to pressure us to get married, but he said he hasn't decided yet. He has said that he wants to get married and have a ton of kids, so what he means is, he hasn't decided if he wants to marry me. My ego is a little hurt. What else does he need to know that he hasn't already learned in almost 7 years? Is indecision the same thing as a decision in this case? We both started therapy separately very recently to work through some trauma and cope with anxiety. I don't know if I should wait to see if he'll come to some kind of epiphany in therapy, or if I should leave and save the decision for him. I love him a lot, and for a long time I saw a future with him. But recently I'm starting to accept signs that he just doesn't love me as much as I love him. How do I know if he loves me or if he just doesn't want to be alone? We don't live together, we won't live together until we are married. He has stayed over for extended periods of time, so we're mostly familiar with each other's habits. We are from different cultures, but I still come from a traditional family, so we have a lot of the same values. I just consider myself to be more independent. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of an ultimatum. I don't like the idea of forcing someone to make a decision out of fear or because they're backed into a corner. My communication skills are something that I'm pretty proud of, to be honest, but it's something that he struggles with. And that's one thing he wants to work on in therapy. I'm working on not projecting my fears of insecurity onto our relationship, even when he isn't communicating properly. He picked me up and I told him that after the conversation with his family, I've been feeling really insecure in our relationship. And if he's unsure if he wants to marry me, I need to know what he's unsure about. I said if we want to have kids, I really can't wait forever. He says that he is sure he wants to marry me, and he might have had a plan to propose. But when I came over, his family completely blindsided him, and now it's awkward, like they've spoiled it. I told him maybe he needs to think about if what we have is what he wants. I just feel it shouldn't be this complicated. Maybe I'm just jaded and bitter at this point and nothing will make me happy. I do believe him, he wouldn't drag me along just for the fun of it. I love him, and our lives are so wrapped up, it's very hard to leave, even if I wanted to. I just wish I could read his mind. I wanted to talk to my therapist before I made any decisions. We both had appointments the following day, and in my session she asked me if I thought I was ready for marriage. I said of course, I've known I wanted to marry him since I asked him to move out with me. 2 years into the relationship and he turned me down. She responded by rephrasing the question. She said she isn't asking if I want to marry him, but rather, is the way I currently feel about myself. The way I handle my problems and my anxiety, and the way my boyfriend and I communicate. Is the way I feel in my relationship the way I want the rest of my life with this man to be? No way came out of my mouth way before I even processed it. Stressed was in my brain in big, bold, yellow letters. Right now I need to continue to work on my issues in therapy and learn what the best version of myself is like before. I'm ready to commit to whatever future version of our lives together looks like. I've only been going for 2 months so far, and I've already seen a huge improvement in my ability to handle stress and my self-worth. My husband Nick was married to his first wife Vanessa for 5 years and they had 2 amazing kids, Luke and Lila. Sadly, Vanessa died in an accident 11 years ago when the kids were very young. I started dating Nick 8 years ago and we started off very slowly for obvious reasons. Nick has always been a little more distant than anyone I'd ever been with. But he and the kids lost Vanessa so young that I understood it. After 3 years of dating, Nick asked me to marry him and I moved in. I've always had a really great relationship with Luke and Lila and they were happy for me to marry their dad. I had wanted an actual wedding, nothing big. But Nick really didn't want one, so we got married at the courthouse with just Luke and Lila present. We had a really fast engagement, but it worked for all of us. I have loved being Luke and Lila's stepmom and officially adopted them after I found out I was pregnant with our son, Casey. The kids have been so great with Casey and help out so much. Nick was wonderful during the pregnancy and had always been a really loving dad and husband. But Nick has been pulling away a lot the last few months. He's been even more distant than usual and working late nights and going away with friends almost every weekend. I've tried talking to him, but he's been impatient with both me and the kids. I found out I was pregnant in June and am now 21 weeks pregnant with a girl. The kids are excited to have a little sister, but Nick just seems so indifferent to everything and everyone. He's been missing soccer games, Lila's birthday, doctor's appointments, etc. Casey is too young to notice, but Luke and Lila are so hurt by their dad's absence. These kids are so good and they lost their mom so young, and I'm infuriated that Nick is ignoring the kids like this. Last week, I finally sat Nick down and told him that he needs to stop disappearing and be more present in our lives. We're going to have another child soon, and before we know it, Luke and Lila will be grown up and going to college. After an hour of arguing, he screamed at me that he wished Vanessa was still alive and that I had switched places with her and died instead. He also threw in some awful comments that I need to stop pretending I'm Luke and Lila's real mom and that I'm only half the mom Vanessa was. The final straw was him saying that he never even wanted any kids with me, but did it so I'd keep busy and leave him alone. I'm so beyond hurt right now. I know I'm just his second choice, but I've always tried to honor Vanessa and tell Luke and Lila how lucky they were to have her as their mom. I love all of our kids more than anything, and I'm just so heartbroken. Nick barely pays attention to Casey now and doesn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. He somewhat apologized this weekend and took all 3 kids to lunch, but he won't even look me in the eye. He seems like he wants to talk, but he doesn't say anything, and I'm too upset to even be near him. I'm not sure where to go from here. Honestly, I can't even be around Nick right now, and if there weren't any kids involved, I'd leave and never look back. I'm not sure if he's cheating or the thought of a 4th child is stressing him out. But I'm devastated and not sure how or why I should save this marriage, besides doing it for the kids. I purchased a 3-bedroom condo in Toronto, Canada 5 years ago when I was in my 2nd year of medical residency. Soon after the purchase, I rented one of the rooms to my roommate to offset the costs of the mortgage. I live in one room, she lives in the second, and the third is my study/office. She has been a great roommate from the beginning. We aren't necessarily friends, as in we don't do things together for fun, but we get along exceptionally well. The entire roommate/tenant relationship has gone swimmingly up until recently. A couple of weeks ago, my roommate broke the news to me that she is pregnant. The father was a fling of hers, who does not want anything to do with the child. My roommate has decided she wants to keep the child anyways, and raise it on her own. To me that seems like a huge challenge, and I admire her for it. The issue is, while I don't necessarily dislike children, I have no desire to live with a baby. While the condo is a fair size, I will most definitely be woken up by the babies crying at night. My condo is also where I like to come home to and relax, like a haven after a long workday. And the idea of coming home to a baby honestly seems absolutely chaotic. Especially since this isn't my own child, i.e. one that my girlfriend and I decided to have / was mentally prepared for. As difficult as it was for me to do this, I told her essentially what I've written here. And that it would be best if she finds somewhere else to live. I am not rushing her out or anything like that. I have given her 6 months notice. Since any later than that will come too close to the birth. She was honestly quite taken aback by this, and thought that I was being cruel. Her primary concern is that rent has gone up substantially in this city since she signed on with me. I haven't increased her rent since she moved in, so she's essentially paying 2015 rent. She works as a waitress, and will likely need to find a lesser apartment to keep within the same budget. A couple of other considerations are that she was out of work while restaurants were closed. But I did waive her rent for that period. All of the furniture is also mine, aside from her bedroom, so she would need to figure something out on that front as well. Aside from all of the child expenses. I understand her position, and I feel horrible about the situation, but I honestly can't do it. I haven't been able to give life much thought lately, as work has been quite busy. Firstly, I have a friend in real estate, and I'm going to see if they can help her try to find some affordable listings. Secondly, as I don't plan to take on another tenant after her, and can afford to do this anyway, I have decided I'm going to waive her rent for the remainder of the tenancy. This will hopefully give her a bit of a boost to get on her feet. I consulted an attorney to be 1000% sure, and this is perfectly legal. Since I live in the unit, the eviction laws are much more lenient. Her baby will become a toddler, and a toddler eventually becomes a school-age child. Will it really be any better to do this later on? When I came home from work today, I told her that I wanted to discuss the overall situation. Before I even began, she actually apologized to me for how she spoke to me, and for expecting that I would be okay for her to raise her child here. I told her that her apology is totally unnecessary, as her reaction was completely understandable considering the uncertainty of her future. I then told her that I would waive her rent for the Rema. I am a 19 years old female. I have an estranged grandpa more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have 2 other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older, he saw him a little more, and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister who is in right now, and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets, and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite, and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young, and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18, and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree, and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do, and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally, but morally,